Black Scully on check. Got a little screen themed hockey jersey on check. Welcome to another marvelous episode. On today's docket, we got quite a bit we want to talk about today. It's Monday. Hopefully you guys, everybody enjoyed their weekend. I certainly enjoyed mine. But we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about today. So CBS Sports, they dropped their Big Ten post-spring power rankings with FanDuel odds. We've done a lot of this stuff, and you guys know I like to react to a little bit of everything. I think it's a great lyrical exercise for me, and because I love the sport so much, I love reacting to stuff. I hope people have that ability to react to my stuff as you guys do all the time in the comment section. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. USC, plus 1,400 to win the Big Ten. You guys know I really believe in USC. They are number one with returning starters this year, and then Gary Patterson, you add there to the defense. I think they're gonna be outstanding. How are we feeling about Ann Arbor with Michigan? How are we feeling about things in Columbus? Is Ohio State really the best team? We'll talk about a lot of that today as well. Also, we have the SCORE Act, which is scheduled to be voted on by Congress this week, and we're starting to see a lot of things come to fruition in the sport of college football. We know that it's pretty much the Wild Wild West as it pertains to monies being spent and how much money these athletes are making. I voice my opinion on CBA. I think CBA is a necessity. I think it is needed to bring balance to our sport. I never liked it in the past when the universities, the programs, and these coaches had all of the power, and I'm not the biggest fan of these athletes having a lot of power and breaking their contractual obligations. I believe that CBA, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, so I wanted to dig in to see like kind of what are some of these money struggles. Do we have a legitimate money problem, or are funds being mismanaged? And I think it's more of the latter, that we're having the mismanagement of funds. And a lot of times when you start to look at things like expansion and, you know, the college football playoff wanting to expand, I think when you start to look at the root cause of it, a lot of people are saying, well, hey, to help a lot of these schools make money. Well, no, some of these damn schools are mismanaging money. And another thing that I'm going to discuss when I get to this topic is the SEC and the Big Ten. Will they seriously consider breaking away from the NCAA? And this is discussions that we had on Overreaction Monday, which will be live today, 8:15 p.m. over on CFB Nation. Make sure you guys are subscribed there as well. But, you know, if they broke away, what would that look like? You know, from a schematic phase, like, you know, how would that work? How much would it change the sport? And I think that from a semantic perspective, that the NCAA and, you know, there's so many things that needs to be fixed, and if they don't get fixed, this thing can really, you know, veer its ugly head. Governor College Football, hashtag go CFB Nation, your only college football destination. Let's get it. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ
defensive
on
minds.
the
They have to be better on that side of the ball. Alrighty, let's get into the news topics. Dakoda Fields is currently facing litigation from Oregon, and I think you're going to see more teams do this when they feel like a player didn't hold up to their obligations or their contract. CBA, man, that word of the day is CBA. So the University of Oregon is suing former DB Dakoda Fields, who's now at Oklahoma, for a breach of contract. Fields agreed to pay Oregon $39,000 in exchange for a release from his contract when he transferred. A $10,000 discount was offered if Fields played by April 20th. Oregon claims he did not pay about agreeing. Hey, my dog Moon, what's happening, man? How you living, brother? Oregon is now requesting the full remaining of the $10,000 plus a 9% interest accumulated since April 21st, plus all attorney fees. You're going to see more and more schools do this, where they're getting sick of players, you know, breaching their contracts, but who's going to hold them to those contractual obligations? We've seen in Seattle where their star quarterback, Damar Williams Jr., who I'm not sure if he truly wanted to enter the portal, more or less just see what his true value is versus what Washington is paying him and see if he could kind of get more money from him. We saw Isaac Brown, stud running back at Louisville, kind of do something similar. So we need CBA. You guys are going to hear me say that a lot this week. You're going to hear me say a lot over the, this episode. I've released, my past couple of weeks, I've talked about CBA a lot. And it's heartbreaking that this thing could be so simple, but like Lauryn Hill said, but you rather make it hard. And that's what we're dealing with now, where, players are kind of just saying, well, screw the contracts, right? Like a lot of people say, after they graduate from a college, you owe, a lot of tuition. Screw that, right? And we got to get on some type of level playing field. We got to get to a point where these players should be held to their contractual obligations, and we're nowhere near that, and we got to find a way to get that. So you're going to see a lot more universities try to sue people. We saw it with Darian Mensah before Duke and Darian Mensah found an agreement. There was like some type of arbitrator or somebody in the middle, like, hey, let's not let this thing get too ugly. Let's figure this thing out. He wants to go to Miami. Allow him to go to Miami. Just make sure that his contract buyout is paid. So not sure how this ends, but we continue to see stories of this where universities are saying, no, bro. You broke your contract obligation. You signed the contract. We didn't put a gun in your head when you signed the contract, bro. Like, pay us what you owe us. And more teams are going to use the lawyers. They have the money for it. Oregon definitely has the money for it. They have the back in the field night. That, yeah, we're going to lawyer up and do what we need to do. Story number 2 is really interesting before I enter the news segment. Bill Belichick opens up about his poor relationship with his first UNC team. And it's interesting to hear that. We know they had an abysmal season last year, really kicked off against TCU. You guys have heard me on the show say all the time, there are measuring stick games for me. Like, when I look at a team, I say, okay, I want to see how good you are, right? Like, Oregon has to travel to Stillwater this year, early in September. I want to see how good both of these teams are, right? If Oregon wins by 28, they're legit. Absolute 21 plus, they're 17 plus, right? They're legit. But if Oklahoma State can keep it close, then that tells me, alrighty, Oklahoma State is better than we probably thought they were, even with 85 new players on their roster. So yes, this isn't a surprise to anyone if you paid attention to Bill Belichick during his duration of as a coach in the NFL until now. Like, he's not gonna be the best with relationships. It's just who he is. He's a sicko when it comes to coaching. He cares about winning. That's going to always be the highest priority. We've seen it's been documented on the documentary Do Your Job. Like, yes, that's the type of individual he is. I think there's just nuance when you're dealing with professionals, even though some of these kids are being paid like professionals. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and 20, 21-year-olds, 20, and sometimes 24 and 25-year-olds, depending on how long they've been in college. And maybe they're on their best, Van Wilder impression. But at the end of the day, there was just nuances with college football. And I said the same thing last year when Matt Patricia joined the college football ranks. Like, all right, how well will he fare, right? Texas is going to be a great test, but he just fared just fine because of the wider splits, because the game is more wide open. How does that work? So Bill Belichick, my biggest concern last year was, one, just the news about him and his fiance. I'm not sure if they got married yet. I don't keep up with a lot of that. The age gap. That was making too much of the news, and some of the things that she was doing was making too much news, and there wasn't enough talk about football coming out the Tar Heel country, right? So we seen what they do year one. What do they look like in year two? I think that is what's going to be important to see how long this thing truly works out. But to hear him say, hey, poor relationship with his first team, and to see and I'm sure he's figured out, like, it's a little bit different from the NFL, right? These relationships have to be pure, right? Not just on the field, but off the field too. Like, these players with classes, or players, who having kids and all that stuff, are dealing with, whatever issues that life bring you. You gotta just realize you're dealing with much younger players. And this is what Bill Belichick said, and I quote, the group last year was like they were recruited by somebody else. They came here for somebody else. I was new. They were leaving. It wasn't a bad relationship, but it wasn't a great one. There wasn't the same kind of adhesion that is there to guys that you bring in that come in because of you. And I think a lot of first-year coaches deal with that. So much happens in your first year, and it comes at you fast during your first year. Like, we even heard, Lane Kiffin, head coach of LSU, who has a $40 million roster, oh, by the way, say, hey, we could have really used the spring portal for first-year coaches. Like, we had that discussion with Zach Kelly last year. We were there for their fall camp a season ago, and he was just talking about, like, how big of a blessing Easton Messer and Caden Camp was because he was actively recruiting because you lose so many kids because, like Coach Belichick said, they have an adhesion with another coach, right? And that adhesion isn't really there because you didn't bring them in. So you do so much work. College football is a sport where, as a coach, you're just going to do a lot of work because, when the season's over with, the season is shorter than the NFL, but the fundraising and the things you have to do in the offseason, I think it is more nuanced, and I think it's also more difficult to coach at the collegiate level than it is at the NFL level. In the NFL level, you say, hey, man, do your damn job. You done? Yeah. We cut you. We done with you. And there's some of that there, but at college, you do so much fundraising. It's the reason that, shout out to Coach Jeff Hafley, who bet on himself. Like, we remember sitting down, Nino had the great conversation he had with him at 2023 ACC Media Days. Really loved the way Jeff Hafley, conducted himself. He shouted out, us for, everything we was doing in the background to make that interview happen for him and Nino. But the fact of the matter is, he said, hey, I want to just get back to coaching. It's more about coaching than fundraising. He bet on himself, landed a job with the Green Bay Packers as their defense coordinator. Now he's the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So there's a lot of fundraising in college football. It's so nuanced, and that's something that you guys hear me say a lot, but it really is because of the amount of work you have to put in the offseason, right? That's why when Hugh Freeze was in Auburn a season ago, and we see that he's golfing a lot, me personally, I say, yo, like he should be able to golf when he feels like it. But that fan base, like, yo, you need to win or you're going to be gone. And ultimately, that's what happened. Like, he didn't win enough and he was gone. So at college football, and for a lot of these coaches who coach at the NFL level, you coming down, it's different, right? A lot of times you're getting kids at the NFL level who kind of have some form of understanding. Like, well, all right, I had to work my butt off to get here. Sometimes, things don't quite pan out and you have the label as, oh, this kid, he's a bust, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, or do the third. But they at least have some form of understanding what it takes to get to this level, right? Where college, you're breaking a lot of hearts, right? When you think about it, you're doing a lot of heartbreaking at the collegiate level because you're getting guys who were the big man on campus at their high school, right? Maybe even in their city, their town, their state, they are the guy. And then you have to go to a college with a bunch of other guys who were the guy. And some heartbreaking is going to be happening there. So college football is so nuanced. So to see the accountability that Bill Belichick has said, and he's not a guy that's going to open up a lot, right? That's just not who he is. But to see this, to me, means that he has a higher understanding of the sport this year than he had this time last year. So shout out to Bill Belichick. And I'm wishing UNC nothing but the best. What I saw last year, it was bad. So I want to see them, headed in the right direction. Of course, for Bill Belichick, the goal is to win a national championship just like it is for everyone else in the ACC. I think, you look at Miami, but then once you start to look at other teams, hey, this thing might be up for grabs other than Miami, right? If we can knock Miami off of their high horse. And everybody has a goal coming into the season of winning a national championship. But what does success look like for them heading into this year? 4-8 last year. So for me, it's bowl eligibility, but at least one game over bowl eligibility. 7-5, I'm like, okay, these things are trending in the right direction. It's a great recruiting vehicle. But I think also something that he must do is end your beef with the New England Patriots. That has to stop, brother. You got one of the greatest recruiting vehicles you can have, a quarterback that played at your institution of higher learning that is having success at the next level. Use it. Drake May is an outstanding quarterback, right? Use that as a vehicle to drive the next great quarterback. Hey, he played here, and if he can do it, you can do it. You can come here and play here, right? So that has to be a vehicle utilized for recruiting. Don't minimize it because of your beef with the Patriots. You also didn't get any players drafted this year as well. So improve your relationship with the NFL. Improve your relationship with the Patriots. You can still feel how you feel, but at the end of the day, sometimes you got to save face just for the betterment of these group of players, brother. So, that's how I feel about that. But, shout out to him. Like, that onus, that accountability, that is super important when you're in this business, right? Because at the end of the day, those players in the locker room got to believe in everything that you're saying. They got to believe, like, I know in Bloomington, them players know, hey, man, our head coach is a sicko, bro. We think we in here working, pushing heavyweight. He already in here working, right? And he's still in here working after we leave. And we go home and we go play beer pong and have a good time. He's still working. So, like, that has to happen. Like, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing for your team to believe, all right, he's here for us. We're building real relationships with him. As somebody who's, like, naturally, like, to me, he seems like an introvert. Now, it might be different with this group of friends just like it is with me. Like, I'm naturally an introvert. With my group of friends, I don't shut up. I will never stop talking, right? But naturally, that's who I am. I'm an observer. I'm going to pay attention, see what's going on, and figure out what's next. But that's it for me for Bill Belichick. Let's move into this next topic. Big Ten backs the 2014 CFP. That's news to nobody, right? They were the ones who kind of put this idea out there. What I've yet to see is a model. And I think that model is extremely important in my opinion because it gives us so much information on, alrighty, so what's constituted in this, right? Out of these 24 teams that make the playoff, right, are we looking at 23 teams, with the G6, bid? And, of course, more than one G6 team can get in like we've seen it in the 12-team field. So I would like to see a model to make me change my mind. But for now, where I'm at with a 2014 college football playoff is no, 100%, yes, 0%. That's just where I'm at, and that's not going to change, right, anytime soon. But I am the type of person, and I say this all the time on my show, you may have a take that's different from mine, but if you can explain it in an eloquent facet, and even though I can still disagree with you, but I'll be like, okay, I can understand where you coming from. Like, I've always been that type of person. So, so Big Ten, they were the ones that threw this idea out last year. It was PR magic when they threw it out. They were dealing with some crazy madness at the time that they threw this idea out there. I forgot exactly what was going on. It's a lot what you're seeing, at our country. If some weird news is put out there, trust me, something behind the scenes is really going on. And that's when they first put this idea out there. I'm like, hell no, I didn't even give it a thought, right? Wouldn't even talk about it on the show. I'm like, yo, what the hell are they talking about? Nobody wants 24 teams in the college football playoff, right? But it's no surprise that, this is what they want. And I guess ultimately, they're having their spring meetings. I think it started today. But ultimately, where it lands me from a mental aspect is, alrighty, so now we're about to see something with Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey. Like, guys who have really shaped what this current thing is as far as the 12-team model, how it should be worked, how it should be aspect, because at the end of the day, the Big Ten and the SEC has more say-so than everybody else. And you may feel a way about it, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. They are the ones that are making these television networks a lot of money. They're the ones year in and year out that are competing for these national championships. They're the ones that are getting players to the next level. So of course they're going to have more say-so than everybody else, but I think this is the first time we've seen from an ideology perspective where they're not on the same page, right? We even seen it where, the 8 conference games versus the non-conference games, right? And, when Greg Sankey went to a Cubs game, like, he was getting trolled, like, hey, man, go to non-conference games like the Big Ten, right? You in Big Ten country, you supposed to get trolled, right? And that's when, Commissioner Sankey said, well, hold my beer. Not only are we going to go to non-conference games, not only are we the premier conference in all of America, but we're going to also do a 10th game that's a power conference game, right? You got to either play a power conference team or Notre Dame. Like, we're going to also do that as well. So when you start to look at our schedule and you start to look at the makeup, the gauntlet in the SEC is tougher than every gauntlet in the country. Now, I do think that the Big Ten is the best conference in America. They won 3 straight, natties. Indiana won 16-0, and I don't even think the SEC has been in the title game. They weren't in it this year. Last year they weren't in it. I don't even think they were in it the year before that. So when you start to really look at that, you say, yes, Big Ten, but that gauntlet in the SEC is still rough. So I think this is the first situation that we've seen and said, all right. So it's Tony Petitti, who was like the newbie a few years ago, but he's established himself because all he's done is win since he became the commissioner of the Big Ten, versus Greg Sankey, who's been the guy, right? Who's been the guy for a very long time. And now we're starting to see, okay, I think, Commissioner Sankey is like, all right, I'm cool with 12. 14 or 16 will probably be the sweet spot. But I know that ESPN is against a 2014 playoff, and I know that the SEC will be against a 2014 playoff. So now, we're going to have this, this grand showdown. That's the way I see it, right? And it may not never be a grand showdown, but now we're looking at both the conferences who are supposed to be guiding us, through the future of the sport, have huge ideology issues. And I think Commissioner Sankey is one of those guys that it ain't gonna be no easy convincing, right? If it don't benefit the SEC, it ain't gonna be no easy convincing. So whatever model that the Big Ten decide to come up, it better benefit the SEC, or Greg Sankey's gonna be 100% against it, right? I just think that's where we at, right? So that's my thoughts on that. No surprise there. Big Ten was the one that initially put out, hey, I think we should do what they do at the FCS level. So it's no surprise there, but it's just news that's coming out because of it. All right, let's speak on Rhett Lashley. Rhett Lashley has some really interesting comments on Kevin Jennings. He said he thinks he's one of the most disrespected quarterbacks in America, and I don't disagree with him at all. I really don't, because Kevin Jennings is dynamic. I thought last year was a down year for him based on what he was able to do the 2024 college football season, where he led SMU to a college football playoff berth. And if you just think about that year that he went through that year, it was him versus Preston Stone. A lot of people, including myself, thought Preston Stone was going to win it. ACC Media Days, he brought both quarterbacks, so both Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings had to deal with who's going to be the starter and all of the other stuff that us the media are going to ask them at Media Days. And then you watch the first game, Kevin Jennings played a lot better. You watch the second game because they were both getting reps. And after in the second game, there was no doubt that in that RPO-driven system that Rhett Lashley runs, that there's no doubt that Kevin Jennings was the better quarterback. Now, my frustration with it was I'm a huge Preston Stone fan. Bro, if you thought that Kevin Jennings was going to win the job, bro, let Preston Stone transfer. But, of course, as a head coach, you don't want that. You don't want to allow that at all. So that was my take on that. But for them to go undefeated in the regular season in the ACC, make it to the ACC championship, lose the ACC championship in heartbreaking fashion that they lost to them, because, it was a game that looked like Clemson dominated, and then SMU stormed back, and Klubnik had arguably the best drive of his collegiate career to get that field goal. I think he did it in like 20 seconds. Like, it was phenomenal. So the expectation was through the roof for SMU. And I'll be the first to say it. I thought there was naturally going to be a sophomore slump for SMU. I was right about them, but also some other teams I was wrong about. Though Indiana had one. I don't know why I bet against Kirk Cignetti. That was kind of stupid, right? But I look at this and say, well, what are the differences going to be now, right? Because you looked at SMU before that. They played in the it was the AAC then, but it's the American Conference now. And, yes, you got tape out there, but what does that look like in the ACC, right? And I think last year what teams were able to do, okay, these are the things that make Kevin Jennings uncomfortable. So we need to, keep him here. What is going to be the adjustment to the adjustment for Rhett Lashley? So, why I do think he's one of the most disrespected, one of the most decorated quarterbacks we have in college football, and enough people aren't talking about him. So do I think some of the onus is on Kevin Jennings? Of course. But I think more of the onus is on Rhett Lashley. How are we going to let him loose as a runner? Right? How we just going to let him go crazy, right? Because it's an RPO-driven system. So, of course, as a guy who wants to be a pass-first guy, he's going to try to look downfield and make completions downfield. But you're just going to have to call some plays to get him up and running, right? That's how I feel about this Kevin Jennings situation. So, while, yes, I do agree with Rhett Lashley. Yes, he is very disrespected. Isn't talked about enough, right, as the best quarterback in the ACC. Not talked about enough in the Heisman. But Rhett Lashley, here's my rebuttal to you. What are you going to do about it, right? To put him in those situations where he's looked at differently when we're talking about the 2027 NFL draft. He has to be placed in situations he can win. Barely had enough rushing yards last year. Had a little bit more in 2024, but when you look at his skill set, this kid is athletic, right? He can really throw the rock. So put him in positions that he's going to win. Run him a little bit more. Make it so that people are talking about Kevin Jennings a lot more. That's my opinion on it. And Ryan Williams, now, I think he hyphenated his name, so he added the Coleman-Williams to it. He talked about his sophomore slump last year, and when I look at him just from a pure talent perspective, what you saw as a 17-year-old freshman in Tuscaloosa was kind of like nothing we ever seen before. 17-year-old doing this, that you think about the play versus Georgia when they were up big. They had that beautiful catch and then took it to the house after it looked like Georgia was going to storm back and win that game. I think last year, and honestly, before I go to some of the issues last year, let's start off on a positive note. Offense coordinator, his first year there was Tommy Rees. Offensive coordinator, his second year there was Dick Sheridan. Offensive coordinator there, his third year there was Ryan Grubb. So this would be the first time he's been there, right? Well, second year there. I'm sorry, it wasn't Tommy Rees. He went from Nick Sheridan. I'm sorry, went from Nick Sheridan to Ryan Grubb. So this would be his first year now that he's a rising junior. that he's coming in with the same system. So to me, I think a lot of the issue was you saw the emergence of Jeremy Bernard, you saw the emergence of Horton. And I think there were times that you saw Ryan Coleman-Williams not really want to go across the middle, man. I'm going to be honest with you, but with somebody with his skill set, just because he's not a super big wide receiver doesn't mean he can't still go across the middle and get active. We saw Odell Beckham used to go across, and he ain't the biggest dude, go across the middle and get active. If you can catch the ball in spots, you can get active. So I just want to see him really have the season he wants to have. And, you know, I think about last year. I think about him and Diego Pavia going back and forth. And this is a direct quote from Ryan Williams. I wasn't able to focus on why people wanted me to do those things. I'm pretty good at football last offseason. I really didn't have the chance to focus on that because there were so many other places I was getting pulled left and right. I think that's fair. You look at his freshman season, 48 catches, 865 yards, 8 touchdowns, 18 yards per catch. The second season, 49 catches, 699 yards, 4 TDs, 14.81 yards. So, yeah, I don't think the system dictated it, you know, to have a successful year the way it was in year one with Nick Sheridan. But he is a stud. I kind of look at him the same way I look at Cam Coleman. I think the biggest difference is I trust the system more. I trust the quarterbacks more than the quarterbacks that, you know, Cam Coleman had to deal with during this time in Auburn. That's why I think Cam Coleman is going to really light it up this year. But Ryan Coleman-Williams, what are you going to bring to the table this year? Are you going to be that alpha number one wide receiver? Can we get a hike up in catches? You've been somewhere around 50 catches, right? Can we get somewhere around 65 catches this year, right? Can you be a focal point? How will they utilize you this year? Ryan Grubb is heading into his second year there. This is your second year with him. I'm going to be excited to see how well this thing works out for you. That was a long into the news. And lyrical exercise, I absolutely love it. Let's go ahead and get into our first segment. Alrighty. Don't forget, if you haven't watched this show before, we're live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, I got a new show coming up. I was going to call it Governor's Film Room. Me and Moon was talking earlier. He was like, nah, you should call it Governor's Playbook. And I can't wait for it. We're going to talk mostly about coordinators. And we're also going to, of course, talk about how to use the players in those systems. But this is going to be very X's and O's heavy. For those of y'all who are nerds about football the way I am, I think you'll love this show. My plan is to have it released on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. I'm going to try to stick to that 6 p.m. time slot. We'll see how things are working out. Our first episode will be on Brendan Marion and his go-go offense. So excited to talk about that. I'm excited about the route. So make sure you guys catch that. It'll be an upload. It won't be live. And we're really going to talk a lot of X's and O's. Like I said, that's my wheelhouse. I'm an X's and O guy over a Jimmy and Joe guy. I will always be that. So let's talk about this Big Ten. Post-spring power rankings. CBS Sports dropped their Big Ten post-spring power rankings. I think for the most part, most people don't have an issue with it. And I will, you guys, if you've watched this show before, know my issue is going to always be with Indiana. They're the national champions until proven otherwise. I don't care who they lost. Don't care who they gained, even though they did gain some outstanding pieces. They are the national champions until proven otherwise. Ohio State is number one in CBS poll. FanDuel has plus 90 to win the conference. Jermichael Smith back, Julian Sands back. 7 other offensive starters are back. Bo Jackson is back. Yes, the talent is there. Arthur Smith's their offensive coordinator. I think we want to see an evolution of this offense with Arthur Smith there, right? You saw how well an NFL caliber defense coordinator worked for them last year. It worked wonders, right? And Matt Patricia is back for a second year at Columbus. I think this team is going to be outstanding. And for me, I think I've only done my top 5, maybe top 6 so far. I'm not putting out my top 25, and this will change as we get to fall camp until like that second week of fall camp. But for me, they're number 3 right now nationally. I got them behind Texas. I have them behind Indiana. I'm not putting anybody in front of Indiana. They won a championship last year. Respect it, right? But I can see why a team person will have Ohio State as one. Oregon number 2 in the CBS Sports Big Ten power rankings, 17-1 in regular season play since they joined the conference. Dan Lanning has won a lot of ball games in this conference, right? Really has. Won the conference championship his first year there. Last year was close to being in the game. They weren't in the conference championship game. I think our biggest issue with Oregon is what we've seen in the playoffs, right? Dominated in 2024 by Ohio State. Dominated by Indiana this last playoff run. what improvements going to be made during the postseason. It's a long, grueling regular season. And Dan Lanning, when I tell you he motivates his players like none other, but how do we get over that? How do we get to that next step for Oregon and then Eugene? The fan base deserves it. Phil Knight, Nike deserves it, all the money that they put up for that team to be as successful as they need to be. Probably more jersey combinations than you know what I'm saying? And probably the best jersey combinations when we're looking at college football in totality. But what is that next step, right? I can look at this team and I can say Dan Lanning does it year in and year out. It is constructed well. One of the best returning quarterbacks in all of the country, and Dante Moore. But what does that look like this year? Because we have some damn good teams in that conference, right? And, of course, we're going to look at the Tier A and Oregon's and Ohio State's and Indiana. But, you know, when you get to Tier B, I think Iowa's going to be really good this year. I think USC's going to be phenomenal. They got more returning starters than any other team in the conference, right? Gary Patterson as that defense coordinator is going to give them that oomph that they needed and that physicality that they need on the defense side of the ball. What does Oregon look like heading into this year? Where they get over the hump, right? Dan Lanning, one of the best coaches in America, right? He really, truly is. But what does that look like, right, this year? Because the fan base, yes, alrighty. You prove we can win in the Big Ten. Thank you. You prove we can get back to the college football playoff again. Thank you. What's that next step? We want to go on a college football playoff run. How do we get there? That's the question I have for Oregon. Love it, though. Indiana's number 3 in CBS Big Ten Power Rankings. I can see how somebody just purely from a roster construction standpoint could say, hey, they might be the third best team in the country. That's not bad in the Big Ten, by the way. But to me, I look at the head coach, I look at the offensive coordinator, I look at the defensive coordinator, I look at the pieces that they were able to add in the portal, and a guy like Josh Hoover, who I think is number 1 in the country for career passing stats. Heading into this season, got a guy, bona fide number 1 wide receiver, Nick Marsh. I look at them. I know that Kirk Cignetti, while I'm talking about Kirk Cignetti, you know what Kirk Cignetti is doing at 6:30 p.m. and the offseason, as everybody like to call this thing, he's working. And I know that. And I trust in that. And that player accountability, I trust in that. There's no way in the world you don't have Indiana as the best team in the Big Ten, but 2, the best team in the country. Until somebody beats them and prove me otherwise, hey, man, we thought we thought it was a fluke in year 1. Don't call it a comeback in year 2. Not only are we going to win the Big Ten, we're going to go undefeated during the regular season. We also going to run the table in the postseason. We're going to finish with a 6-10-0 record, right? The greatest record we've ever seen in the sport. And unless we expand to 24 teams, nobody may ever pass it, right? USC at number 4 in their rankings, I really like this spot. Because in my estimation, USC will be the 4th best team in this conference. USC is knocking on the door. We see Lincoln Riley and them, they knocking at the door. Hey, tier 1, that's tier teams. Hey, bro, we are coming for you, right? Oregon, you do take a trip. The SoCal this year, we're coming for you, right? That's how I look at USC. I really love what they bring to the table. 15 returning starters in this era of college football where the transfer portal and everybody is bitter, bro. And then you put 2 receivers in the NFL, right? With Mekhi Lemon being taken in the first round, I'm telling you, USC is going to be dangerous this year. And so I like them at 4 a lot. Michigan at 5. For me, it's hard to disagree with this list so far. And I know Michigan has lost a lot. We got a lot of questions about Bryce Underwood, but I trust Kyle Whittingham. I trust Kyle Whittingham. When I tell you there's a guy that's going to do this thing the right way, and he speaks with such honesty. You can tell he's been doing it for a long time. Like, he'd have been through the different eras of college football because he's been doing it for a very long time. And the thing I respect him about this most, he didn't want to outstay his welcome in Salt Lake City. He didn't, bro. He said, man, Coach Gailey, it's your turn, bro. Continue to lead this program in the direction and even soar past those heights. I'm going to fall back elsewhere and see what falls in my lap. Well, God damn it, one of the best places to be in the country, Ann Arbor, that fell into your lap. What are they going to do this year? What does Michigan look like under Kyle Whittingham, right? As we've seen his teams have the ability to play with that physical aspect. When they were in the Pac-12, I said they were always one of the most physical teams. The Big 12, I think that thing dipped a little bit, but they also can pass the ball. We've seen Devin Dampier have success in his system. We've seen Cameron Rising have success in his system. What does this look like in Ann Arbor, a team that has heavily ran the ball really for the last 20 years? I don't think I've seen them open up the playbook. They did for Denard Robinson a little bit, shoelace, but it was in the aspect of running the ball. I'm talking about in the aspect of passing the ball. When they're going to truly open up this playbook, anything is possible. Chad Henne's probably the last time when they had Mario Manningham and them boys on the outside. I just can't think of a moment, and Beecham Breeston, what's his first name? I forgot. He's dope though. He can return a kick. So I haven't seen them open up this offense in a very long time. Will we see it a little bit this year, right? Because, they just been, running physical dominant, and you know what you're going to get when you face Michigan. That's a good thing, but the bad thing is they're going to bring that intensity. What happens when, from a physicality perspective, somebody match that intensity like we're seeing with USC a season ago? That's really my biggest concern and my biggest question when we talk about them. Penn State at number 6. Now, I've heard speculation and talk that Penn State could possibly win the Big Ten this year, and I look at it, I sit back, I think about it. I was like, I'm the type of person I always try to find what angle, what aspect is this coming from, right? Is this coming from the aspect you think they're that damn good? Or you think that, finally Matt Campbell is in a place where the resources are plentiful? The resources were not as plentiful in Ames, Iowa as they are in Happy Valley. And then you look, and I'm like, what is it? The roster construction? Yes, of course I like Rocco Beck. Of course I like Carson Hansen, right? Of course I like some of the pieces that they were able to retain through the coaching change, right? It's the schedule. So for those people who have Penn State, like, hey, I think they're going to do really well. They did what I did a couple of years ago, and I've done it with a few teams. NC State is one of those teams. This year, I looked at their schedule. They got a lot of home games. They avoid a lot of the top-tier teams in the ACC. They got a quarterback that I think is purely dynamic. So I think when people are looking at Penn State, they're looking at their schedule and saying, oh, they don't got to play this. They don't got to play Indiana. They don't got to play the S-tier teams. They don't got to play Ohio State. They don't got to play Oregon. And some of the toughest matchups are at home. Yes, you can look at the schedule and, be blown away by it. But I think the issue is you look at Penn State and you're not respecting the other teams that are in this conference. Like, are you respecting Michigan? Are you respecting USC? Are you respecting Washington? Are you respecting Iowa, right? That's really, the conversations that I have. So they're number 6. I ain't mad at it. Washington, number 7. I talked about the Damon Williams drama a little bit earlier. I think he wanted to test the market and see what his true market value was. Litigation is what came from Seattle, so he had to go back, right? So I think Washington's win total is like 7.5 games. I think that's good. Me personally, they lost some pieces, right? Denzel Boston is gone. Also Jonah Coleman is gone. So what does that look like? But there's a guy in this country that coaches at the collegiate level. Jeff Fish is one of those coaches who have an imprint or everything, right? You see some coaches, like we've been at fall camp, like I've been to Virginia Tech fall camp. Brent Pry's is going to be somewhere near the linebackers. You just know it, right? Went to FAU fall camp. Zach Kittley is going to be somewhere around the quarterbacks, right? And he knows this, right? He's trying his best to go see what the defense look like, but that's just where he's naturally comfortable at, right? But I think Jed Fish is one of those anomalies in that aspect because he's just so involved with everything, offense, defense, and special teams. So they're number 7. I was number 8. This is where I get a little confused, right? I look at Michigan. I look at the construction of the team. I trust Cal Whittingham, right? Same thing with Jed Fish in Washington. But I look at Iowa, right? I look at the players that they send to the NFL year in and year out. But this is my statement with Iowa. As long as Ferentz is there, as long as Phil Parker, arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country, is there, I'm not doubting Iowa. Why do we have them 8th? Right? Talk to me. Why is a team in Iowa City who Kirk Ferentz is always going to be somewhere around 8-4, 9-3? Why are they the 8th best team in the country, in the conference? That part I don't get. To me, I will have them above Washington. No disrespect, Washington. I will have them above Penn State. No disrespect to Penn State. But it's something I can trust. It's a recipe I can rely on, brother. Right? I'm vegan. I've been vegan for 10 years. It's difficult, right? When I first started, it was extremely difficult. It really was because there weren't a lot of places. So what became my home of veganism was Wegmans. Wegmans is a place that I know I'm going to go to aisle 1C and all my vegan food is going to be there. Right? And the best labels in all of the business, right? I trust Wegmans. To me, for my vegan food, Wegmans is going to always deliver, right? May not have a bunch of new products for vegans, but those products that they have, they're going to constantly deliver a 9-3. And you know what? I'll take that 9-3. I will take 175% of my games with Wegmans because I trust it. It is a brand I trust, right? It's like Blue Magic in the 70s, right? What Denzel say, I guarantee it, right? When he was talking to one of the neighborhood hustlers trying to market his as Blue Magic, and it wasn't Blue Magic. It was stepped on, right? But that's how I feel about Wegmans. The same way I feel about Wegmans and delivering that 8-4 and that 9-3, I can trust it. I don't know if I'm going to go in Walmart and Walmart going to have all the vegan products. They ain't got better, but I don't know if I can go in the Giants or Shop a Fruit Warehouse or Kroger's or whatever you got in your neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? For the grocery stores, Food Line is another one. But I know that I can go to Wegmans and Wegmans going to deliver that 9-3 every time for me and my diet. Every time they're going to deliver. And I trust it. I guarantee it. So the fact that we have Iowa number 8 on this list, we got some discussions to have, CBS Sports. Why is Iowa the 8th best team in that conference when they constantly deliver 8-4 and 9-3 teams? What are you smoking, bro? They was just in a conference championship a few years ago when Michigan won it all. I just don't understand the Phil Parker and the Kirk Ferentz disrespect. I'll never understand it. They should be higher. Illinois is at number 9. Another one of those teams, right? Brett Bielema is there. He knows the Big Ten so well. We seen Luke Altmaier had some outstanding years there. What does it look like with Caden Hauser as a starting quarterback there, right? We know they got Bobby Hawk from the FCS level, a respected head coach. A guy that probably could have got a G6 job, honestly. But, you know, he was tired of the fundraising, just like Jeff Hafley, who I talked about earlier, right? So to get, you know, when you have these coaching rooms and these staffs, whether it's at the analyst position or coordinator position or assistant coordinator position, but when you have guys, right, that put in the work at a high level at what they do, and now somebody like Brett Bielema can go sit back, right, while they, you know, after practice is over with, 6, 7 p.m., you looking at film, you may even crack open a brew, man, you sit back with Bobby Hawk, like, what do you see here? Like, how can our offenses be better? What are some of the inefficiencies we have in our offense? And you can have that talk with somebody that has done it at that type of level, right? And yes, their defense isn't returning a lot of starters. Neither is their offense, to be quite honest with you. But I do like the pieces that they have. I like Valentine. What will Hudson Clement do this year? He really wasn't much of a factor last year. Will he be a factor this year? Right. That's how I look at this team. But consecutive 9-1 seasons for Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini is something we should applaud 1,000%. So I'm not mad where they're at on this list. It can even be argued with a couple other teams on this list, but I'm not mad at it. All right, Nebraska's 10th on this list. I love Anthony Calandria. Everybody know that UNLV transfer. How does he work in his Dana Holgerson system? Nebraska is like that girl that you dating and you want them to be somebody they not, right? They outside, they lit, they in it, you know what I'm saying? They constantly going out, having a good time. Like, you know, you can't turn that into a housewife overnight. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all know what I'm talking about. And I feel like that's where we at with Nebraska. Like, such a history, like, such a story program, right? Think about the traditions, the pageantry that you have with Nebraska. But haven't they disappointed us? When we seen schedules and years that people were like, man, Nebraska may go 10-2 or 11-1. Nebraska who? What has given you that impression that they're back? And this is coming from a guy that growing up, I love the Cornhuskers. I love the Lawrence Phillips of the world. I love the Tommy Fraziers of the world. I love the Amon Greens of the world. The Eric Crouches of the world. This team was dominant, and they did it in an offense that I seen growing up in the Washington, D.C. area. Like, you know what I'm saying? We ain't passed the ball back then. We ran the rock. And on defense, if they did pass the ball, I was picking it up, right? I played corner, and I played running back, and I played flanker. Like, why we keep believing in Nebraska, bruh? Like, last year we was hyped on the Matt Rule, year 3. Yeah, I was hyped on it too. I ain't gonna lie. But, like, what makes you think with this current roster construction, like, Anthony Calandria is an outstanding dual threat quarterback. I love the progression we seen when he was in Charlottesville versus when he was in UNLV. What can he deliver for the Cornhuskers? If he does indeed deliver, I would be so happy, right? But are they truly the 10th best team in this conference? I can look at Nebraska on this hand. I can look on PJ Fleck and Minnesota in this hand. Is Nebraska truly better than Minnesota? And I know as the Cornhuskers faithful, they're going to be upset with me saying that, but I want you to look at this analytically. And objectively and not subjectively, is Nebraska better than Minnesota? Are they? I think Minnesota has done more with less. I think Nebraska has done less with more. That's truly how I feel about it. Like no denying it. That's how I feel about it. Minnesota's next on this list. I like Minnesota a lot. They're going to have the ability to win the war over attrition on the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. Right? They did lose Corey Perch to Oregon, who's going to play outstanding for Oregon this year. But PJ Fleck and company, you got to find a way to win road games. You got to find a way to close out some of these close games. Because I've seen Minnesota in some games, they had an ability to win it, just didn't find a way to win it. Number 12 was Northwestern. I like where Northwestern is. Great coming out of last year, can they duplicate that? Can they replicate that? That's my biggest question for Northwestern. Number 12, UCLA. Bob Chesney, he's getting the buzz that he wants. He believes that Nico Iamaleava is back. This is a program, in my opinion, that does struggle with finances. Can they figure that out? How do they figure that out, right? That's the biggest question for UCLA. But we know that Bob Chesney is going to put the work in. But are they better than some of the teams that's below them? Maryland at 14, I don't get. 2-16 versus Big Ten opponents over the last 2 seasons. They have struggled. Mike Locksley is such a great coach. And I know he's a great coach because I'm around the program a lot. Seasoned credential member of UMD, the University of Maryland. I'm at a handful of games every year, at least 4 or 5 games every year. So I'm around the program. I've seen this team start off electric a season ago. And then up big versus Washington and found a way to lose the game. That's kind of been their story, even in the Nebraska game. Yeah, Nebraska won the game, but they had opportunities to win the game. I love what Malik Washington brings to the table so much. I thought he honestly should have transferred, to be honest with you. I'm glad he didn't, of course, being a Marylander and from the area. I wish them success this year, but are they the 14th best team in this conference? What have they showed that they're better? What have they showed? They honestly could have showed that they're worse. Wisconsin, Luke Fickell, man, I love the hire when Luke Fickell first arrived in Madison, Wisconsin. I thought he would provide the culture that they wanted, that they really longed for in previous years, but the changing of that offensive system from that downhill, power I formation, strong eye attack, to then going into the air raid, no, it didn't work at all. So then, last season they reverted back to what they know, right? Colton Joseph, Old Dominion transfer, will be the guy at quarterback. What do they look like this year? When I tell you there isn't a better brass in America than the brass that's in Madison, the vote of confidence that they've given Luke Fickell has been out of this world. Because if he was anywhere else, we'll finish the rest of that statement. He might not be there, right? Might not be there. So we got to see what this looks like for Wisconsin. Rutgers is one of those universities, Piscataway, that they're having some financial issues, man. Dylan Longer is this guy quarterback. He had some success early in the season at Boston College, but it was rough. It was rough there for him. So Rutgers at 16, I can't argue with it. I could try to, but I don't know. Michigan State at 17. I'm so happy that Pat Fitzgerald is back in the Big Ten at East Lansing. We're queen from him because a lot of us did him dirty when we accused him of something that he ain't even do, that he ain't even know about, right? Michigan hasn't had a bowl game since 2021. The Jonathan Smith experience didn't work, right? So what does that look like for them this year in East Lansing? And every year there's like teams I want to watch their games that I'll be pulling for. Michigan State is one of those teams. It truly is. And Purdue is at 18th, and rightfully so, man. They have had 6 total wins since Jeff Brom has left. We was hoping that Barry Odom could get it right, but things don't happen overnight. I'm hoping with this being his second season, they're starting to get some of his guys there. Hopefully they can fix it, but what I want to say to that team in West Lafayette is to be patient. Even if you have a down year this year, I'm not sure a new coach helps the situation. You went through Ryan Walters, who's an outstanding defensive coordinator. Didn't quite pan out there. Now you got Barry Odom. So just be patient with the process. 'Cause sometimes you had the right guy there. You just need some time, right? So let's go to our next segment, man. Wow, this has been the fastest 50 minutes of my life. Because when I tell you I've been enjoying this episode, I've been enjoying this episode. So my next segment is we're gonna talk about governor. It's our governor ruling segment. Does college football have a financial problem, or do they have a financial literacy problem? Shout out to Ross Dellinger of Yahoo, now on 3 as well, Sports. I think he's one of the best. Actually, let me take that back. That's a little too modest. I think he is the best reporter in all of college football. I was telling you guys about him Friday. I did interview him last year at Big 12 Media Days. Had an outstanding conversation with him. And if you are a diehard of college football and you guys are on X, formerly known as Twitter, make sure you have the notifications on for him. Pete Nakos is another good one. Pete Thamel is another good one. And CFB Nation is a great one, right? Make sure you have the notifications on for there, because if you want to stay in the know what's going on in college football, of course you can trust the governor. We open up every episode, we're into the news. It's like a layup line. You know how it is. So let's talk let's talk a little bit about this. Shout out to him. Read the article. It's a fantastic article. You all should go read it over there on Yahoo Sports. But we're starting to see the narrative more than I want you that, some of these college football universities are struggling. And when I did some math a few episodes ago, I'm just like, it just doesn't make sense for me. Some of these top-tier ACC schools should be making a lot of money. Like, even ones that struggled the last few years, like Florida State, like, resources are plentiful there. You should be making money, right? We've seen Texas Tech emerge in this era because of the backing that they have, because the resources are plentiful. Why are some of these programs struggling, right, is the biggest question. And I think the more you uncover it, I think the more you'll find out there's been a lot of wrongdoing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the more you uncover it, that's the more you're going to find out there's been a lot of wrongdoing, right? So let's just talk purely from a numbers perspective, right? Big Ten generated $1.47 billion in revenue from 2024-2025. It's a lot of money. Ohio State earned $91 million in conference distribution alone last year. Texas and Ohio State each generate approximately $350 million in total athletic department revenue annually, right? You start to include merch sales and what you do at the stadium when you upcharging for food. Like, a lot of these schools are making a lot of money, right? And I can understand from a financial perspective if some of these G6 schools are struggling. Maybe you don't have the buy-in from your fan base. Like, FAU football is so exciting to watch, but you got so much to compete with Boca Raton. It's such a beautiful place, right? And paradise, as they like to call it. So even there, I can understand it, but that's when your budgeting has to be top tier and it has to be A1, right? If we're going to, allow NIL to get some of these players, make sure that we get in some of these players for the hometown discount, to me, that is important. The house settlement cap is $21.3 million per school in direct athlete compensation for 2026-2027. The cap is set at 22% of the average of the 68 Power Conference school revenues, not individual school revenues, but we know there are 40 million rosters. Coach Whittingham of Michigan said we will see a $50 million roster next year, right? A dozen or more have basketball rosters at 20 million. You're talking about 13 players, right? 20 million for 13 players? Are you effing kidding me? Versus football, you got 85 and then plus the 20 which is room for like walk-ons and stuff like that. So that's crazy. We don't even have 20 million, football teams, right? With 85 or so players. So to have that in basketball is crazy. So a national agency representing football coaches just projected football rosters at the biggest brands will climb to 50 or 60 million next year. So I've talked about CBA a lot. And the more and more we unpack and we talk about these things on governor ruling, the more and more we're going to see that CBA is part of the solution for some of this. The next part of the solution for this is accountability in all facets of college football. We need so much accountability. This thing is bad. Like some of this is bad, right? So here's some of the quotes that tell the story. Georgia President Jared Moorhead said the House settlement has been nothing short of a disaster. All of the assurances from the conference lawyers about this settlement solving any of our key issues have not materialized because of the loopholes in so-called third-party NIL deals. What happened to NIL go? Wasn't that supposed to legitimize this? So we know, anything over the numeric value of $600 was supposed to be on paper so we can all look up, search, and see these legitimate NIL firms, right? That hasn't worked, right? One ACC athletic director, I'm rooting for us to lose, referring to rooting for the plaintiff attorneys to beat the CSE so their rejected NIL deals can pass through. Ohio State AD said we cannot govern the money any longer. That's interesting. Isn't that your job? Isn't that in your job description? But okay. One Power Conference athletic director on whether athletes would be ruled ineligible. What, are we not going to have a football season? One agent representing the top college football athletes will have a year without college sports. Then there's negotiation toward leagues separating from the NCAA and having a CBA. We've been hearing a lot of this talk lately about, leaving the union, right? Like they did during the Civil War times, right? What does that look like? I have so many questions, like how you have like an overarching theme. Okay, teams may leave the NCAA, but what does that look like? Like, we going to have 2 national championships? Like, which league are we supporting? We watching both leagues? How does that interrupt the television money? Like, I just have so many questions, right? And it never stops. I'm almost like that kid, kicking his legs in the back seat. Like, are we there yet, right? That's how I am when we talk about teams succeeding from the union that is the NCAA. What does that look like? And it's kind of scary when you think about it. Texas A&M AD Trev Alberts. Lots of people in the league are saying, what is the plan B? Florida AD Scott Strickland. Federal law prevents us from settling national standards. It seems like the only chance you have in setting a standard is a smaller subset of schools. Message. They trying to succeed from the union. They trying to leave the NCAA. That's crazy to me, right? And so that's when I say, do college football have a money problem? Or do we have a financial literacy problem? And I'll add a third metric to that. Or do we have an organization problem? I think it's a little bit of both B and C. I don't think that there's a legit money problem because a lot of these schools are making money hand over fist. I just went over the numbers with you. Now, I think some of the monies are being mismanaged, and the fact that these athletes are uncapped in the money that they can make, and they can come to your school and they can leave your school, and those contracts aren't upheld. CBA! But I always thought that CBA would be within the house of the NCAA. I never thought that CBA could be like, they completely say, yo, we're done, right? We talking about 68 power conference teams. Well, what about if we went to 34, with the SEC and the Big Ten? Like, what would that look like? I have so many questions about that, right? So I think we have an organization problem. We need CBA for both sides. But I also think our money problems most of it is coming from mismanagement. Manage your money, right? So Ohio State generates $350 million in total athletic department revenue over last year. The House settlement cap, direct athlete compensation, is $21.3 million. That's 6% of Ohio State's total revenue going directly to the athletes, right? And one sport, right? That's crazy to me. The NFL plays their players 48% of the league revenue. NBA somewhere around 49 to 51% of their revenue. NHL pays exactly 50% of the revenue. Monies are being mismanaged. And I'm talking about for the power conference teams, right? You can be in Stillwater and have 2 back-to-back bad seasons that you had in Stillwater. Those fans are still going to show up. They're still going to buy merch. They're still going to represent their team. To me, that's why a lot of this just does not make sense. CBA. That's what we need, right? So where is he? If we playing roughly 6%, right, based on the Ohio and everybody not Ohio State, where's the other 94% going? Message. I mean, that's all I gotta say about this. So I think we need CBA. These monies got to stop being mismanaged. Let's go ahead and move on. I wish I could have had more time for this, but damn, this hour just came by fast as hell. All right, let's move on to our next segment. Alrighty, so we're gonna do Athlon Sports. Way too early, top 25. I'm just gonna go through this, not gonna react much. You guys already know how I feel. They had Ohio State at number 1, Georgia at number 2, Texas at number 3. I will have Texas at number 2 in mine. Notre Dame at number 4. Number 5 is Indiana. I will have Indiana at 1. Oregon is at 6. Miami at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Texas A&M at 9, LSU at 10, Ole Miss at 11, Texas Tech at 12, Michigan at number 13, USC at 14. Don't know how Michigan's above USC after USC put hands and feet on them last year. Alabama at 15, BYU at 16, Washington at 17, Penn State at 18. I don't think they should be in the top 25. Let them earn it. Houston at 19. I love it. I'm high on Houston this year. Utah at 20. I ain't mad at it. Shout out to you, Travel, Huddleworth. Shout out to you, bro. So Virginia Tech is my team. I love Virginia Tech. I live in Virginia. So if I had to pick a team, that's my team. But honestly, I just love the sport, bro. I'm everywhere. We travel. We go to a bunch of games. We go to somewhere around like 25 games a year. Because a lot of weeks we double up, or we'll go to a game on Thursday or go to a game on Friday. I'll go to midweek games. So I like a lot of the local teams here in Virginia. I rock with Liberty, rock with JMU, rock with Virginia Tech. If there's a team I'm rooting for most of, it's Virginia Tech for sure. SMU at 22, Louis. And welcome, bro. Glad you're here. We're live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m. for our live Governor College Football show. And then Governor's Playbook, there'll be upload format at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays. Who's your favorite team, brother? Louisville at 23. I ain't mad at that. You guys know how I feel about Jeff Brom. He much deserved extension. 24 Boise State, 25 is Iowa. We have run out of time. Make sure you guys are subscribed here. We're live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also tonight over at THE CFB Nation channel on YouTube, we're going live with Overreaction Monday. I'll be with the mayor of college football, my boy Nino Brown. I'll be with the waviest ever do it. Y'all about to come up. Y'all stole a damn good football coach, man. When I tell you James Franklin has been gospel in Blacksburg, he's been gospel. Like, he's been so vocal about this chip on his shoulder. He's been vocal about getting an athletic director that is passionate about football. I think that's outstanding, bro. But make sure you subscribe. I'll have an upload tomorrow, and then I'll be back live Wednesday. And then we also live at 8:15 p.m. So, yeah, you all take care. Can't wait for the show tonight, man. One. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ on
Defensive
the
minds.
track.
They have to be better on that side of the ball.